A very good evening to everyone. My name is Smriti Shah, and I welcome all of you for this open session on how to maximize the score in sociology. But before we start this session, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate everyone who has made it to the list this time. But at the same time, I would like to extend my support to those who, due to some or the other reason, could not make it to the list this time. Guys, I have one message for you, and that is, you might encounter defeat, but you should not feel defeated. So this time, let's make a promise to ourselves that we are going to work even harder, we are going to work on our limitations, we are going to work on our weaknesses, and we'll make sure that we bounce back. We'll make sure this time we also get our share of success. So on this note, I will be starting with today's session. Now, just for the information, did you guys bother to look at the selection list or the marks of the toppers this time? I mean, the range of the marks of all the selected candidates? Did you notice that time and again, all of us have been reiterating that there are two papers which are very significant to increase your chances for selection. One is your optional paper, and the second is the essay paper. And this time again, these two papers have made considerable impact on the probability of our selection. For example, on one hand, the people are scoring 280 plus in their optional, whereas on the other hand, people are hovering around 190, 185 in their optional. Can you see the difference of 100 marks? And that is more than enough. And same goes for essay as well. But the challenge is that these are the two areas we are not working adequately. Okay, essay is totally neglected area. That we don't even bother to work upon. But even when it comes down to optional, I know many of you might be thinking, nahi ma'am, aisa to nahi hai. We are working on our optional. But see, one thing is you are working. The other thing is you are working in the right direction. That is what is the need of the hour. You have to be a hard worker, but at the same time, you need to be a smart worker as well. What's the point of putting in efforts in a direction which is not going to give you the desired result? And by the way, this year, our sociology test series result has been overwhelming. A lot of students have cleared, and congratulations to all of them. But on the other hand, I would like to take this opportunity to inform everyone that there were a lot of good students, sincerely good students, but due to some reason, they could not make it to the list. They did not get the requisite or the expected marks. So here you need to understand that no matter how intelligently you have prepared for your subject, if that intelligence is not getting conveyed to the person who's correcting your script, then it would not serve the purpose. Is that very clear? It is very important to practice. The more you practice, the more you are going to reap the fruits of it. In fact, I'll tell you something. This year, I decided that I am going to listen to all the toppers talk. I know you must be thinking, ma'am, seriously, you have time? Yes, I did. And I made sure, because there are a lot of toppers who are sharing their journey with us, and it is really nice to hear those young people. And it gives you a sense of pride also that, these people have done so well. So when I was listening to all these toppers, whatever toppers talk has happened on our platform or other platform, so I was just trying to understand, is there a common thread among these toppers? See, every topper has a different optional. The toppers have different academic background. The toppers have different way of presentation. The toppers have different strategy to prepare. Everything, obviously, it is going to vary. So I was just looking for, is there a common thread? And there were two threads which I found. One, I found that each and every topper, without fail, have acknowledged the importance of mocks. Whether it is preliminary stage or it is mains preparation. Each one of them has acknowledged that if you're not going to write your mocks, if you're not going to practice answer writing, it would be challenging to clear this exam. And second thing, each and every topper has highlighted the importance of notes making. Everyone has talked about how they have planned their own notes, how they have stick to those notes, how they have revised those notes over and over again, which gave them the confidence that no matter what kind of questions would be asked, they are going to use their conceptual understanding and nail the paper. So these were the two things which I noticed, irrespective of the optional, irrespective of the academic background, irrespective of the style of writing presentation. These two things were common in every topper's talk. And this is what we've been saying time and again over the years, that guys, you need to work upon this, right? So this is going to be the agenda for today's session. So for next 2 hours, or whatever time we take, we are going to talk about each and every aspect. See, if you look at sociology, I know there are certain set of people who are listening to this session. They might be those who are writing their mains for the very first time. And with sociology, so obviously there are jitters, right? There might be some of you who have already written mains before, but due to some or the other reason, have not been able to fare well in sociology. So they are hovering around, let us say, 230, 240, 250. So that is the reason that why you are listening to this session. Or there might be some of you who are still in that contemplating stage that whether I should go for sociology optional or not. So more or less the session is going to address each and every doubt. Okay? Now, you need to understand that if I talk about sociology, and if you have gone through the syllabus, you will understand that there is no rocket science involved in sociology. It's a wonderful subject. It is very relatable subject, right? But the challenge is people do not score much. This time also the highest, if you've scored 280 plus, that's like phenomenal score, right? So anything above 280 is like great. That is what we are noticing for past 2-3 years, that anything above 280 is great. And if you are managing around 270 to 280, even that is also fine, provided you have done equally well in other papers. But anything less than 265 becomes a challenge, because in that situation, there is a pressure to perform extremely well in your personality test. That is the interview stage, to have your name in the list, right? So we do not want to be at the mercy of the marks that we get in personality test. So in that situation, let's promise ourselves, whosoever is watching the session and even, have decided to take sociology, that our target should be that we will score 280 plus. And if we settle down at 270 also, that would be fine. But anything less than 265 would definitely be a challenge, right? So even if you get into the list, maybe the rank would not be what you wanted. So you might end up giving one more attempt. So to be on the safer side, 280 plus should be the target. Promise yourself today that कहते हैं वो secret में लिखा है कि if something subconsciously, if you are aiming at something, then the chances of you achieving that is very high. So keep on telling yourself every day, day in, day out, that 280 plus is the target which I have set for myself when it comes down to my optional sociology. Now then we have to plan that how am I going to achieve 280 plus. So the agenda of this session is to help you understand how am I going to achieve 280 plus. Now, if you look at the PPT, you will understand, or if you look at the screen, you will understand that actually when I was supposed to take this session, I was just talking to myself and I was telling that what am I supposed to tell these students? They are so well aware. What am I supposed to tell them? But then I realized that I don't have to do anything. I just have to tell you the mistakes which I committed during my attempt. And I just have to tell you, please don't commit those mistakes. Everybody says, and largely the people have been telling us, there are two set of people in this society. One, who learn from their own mistakes through their own experiences. That is one of me. I learned through my mistakes and I thought I would not be repeating that, right? And the second set of people are those who learn from others' mistake. But the challenge in my case was I took too much time to learn through my mistakes. I don't want you guys to do that. I really want you guys to clear your exam in this very attempt when you're writing your mains. So please learn from the mistakes of others who have not been able to clear this exam and try not to commit those mistakes. There are certain pillars which needs to be taken care of in case you want to score well. The first and foremost thing is that you should be aware about your syllabus. I know many of you might be thinking that, ma'am, do you really think that we are preparing for an optional and we have not seen our syllabus? Yes, I know. Yes, that is the problem. We just see the syllabus. We don't study the syllabus. If you look at the syllabus of sociology, you will understand that for every topic, they have clearly specified that what topics do they expect you to prepare, whether it is paper 1 or it is paper 2. So it is not important just to go through the syllabus, but a diligent awareness about your syllabus. Each and every term which is mentioned in the syllabus, that is the basic minimum that you can prepare. Obviously, every year, there are certain set of questions which are beyond our expectation. There are certain set of questions which are new to us. But do you realize that those set of questions are new for everyone? There are certain set of questions which are too application based. But then do you realize that if those questions are application based or it is very unconventional kind of a question, that is the story for everyone, right? We are not the only one who's sailing in that boat. But if you get a very expected, theoretical or even application based question which is on the expected lines and there we falter, then in that situation, we are already outside the list. So the new question, unconventional question, is posing challenge for everyone. But what about that 60-65% of the paper which is on conventional lines, which is largely based on what is directly given in the syllabus? So it is very important that each and every aspect of the syllabus has to be covered. So what you can do is, easiest way of preparing. There are a lot of people who come and ask, ma'am, क्या coaching के बिना नहीं हो पाएगा sociology? नहीं हो जाएगा. थोड़ी मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी बट हो जाएगा, ठीक है. सोशियोलॉजी में कोई खास इतना चोचले हैं नहीं. इट्स अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग सब्जेक्ट, वेरी एप्लीकेशन बेस्ड, वेरी रेलिवेंट. इट इज ऑल अबाउट व्हाट इज हैपनिंग अराउंड. द ओनली चैलेंज व्हिच आई हैव नोटिस्ड इन सोशियोलॉजी इज स्कोरिंग मार्क्स. एंड दैट ऑल्सो ऐसा नहीं है दैट यू डोंट स्कोर मार्क्स, बट हाँ, वो 300 प्लस आजकल दे नहीं रहे हैं, ठीक है. सो समवेयर अराउंड 280 प्लस 270 प्लस पीपल आर स्कोरिंग एंड इट कैन बी डन विथ लिटिल एफर्ट बट इन द राइट डायरेक्शन. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? ठीक है. सो इफ यू लुक एट इट, so the first thing is that one should be aware about the syllabus. The next thing, if you look at it, what is the point of just knowing the syllabus if you do not have an idea that what kind of questions UPSC has been asking? So again, it is very important that one should be thorough with the previous year questions. I'll take these things in detail. The third pillar is notes preparation. So based on the syllabus, based on the kind of questions which UPSC has asked in the past, you have to prepare your own set of notes. I'll discuss each and every component in detail as and when we proceed. And then finally, I sincerely believe in this strategy that one should definitely go through topper's script. You know why? It gives you a sense of assurance that you are on the right track. It gives you a sense of belief that whatever you are doing, you will be able to fetch marks. At the same time, the topper script acts as a reference group. Remember reference group of Merton, right? So it acts as a reference group based on which you can actually compare that at what position your preparation is. And most importantly, based on topper script, you can identify your weaknesses, your limitations, and you can work on it. So it is a smart strategy to work on your weaknesses. And sometimes by looking at topper script, you get very good ideas. So That is why whether it is GS, whether it is essay, whether it is optional, you have to go through Topper script. And that is why we have uploaded on our resource portal, वो Topper script का portal है ना, वो column है, तो उसमें Toppers की scripts हैं. तो चाहे GS है, चाहे ethics हो, or optional, please go through those Topper script. You will understand that how people are scoring marks, and you will understand that वो जो एक unrealistic expectation नहीं है that your English should be phenomenal, your writing should be beautiful, the presentation has to be stupendous. ना, एवरेज आदमी भी एक अच्छी अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ अगर आंसर लिखता है, so they are clearing this exam. Today we'll discuss through Topper script and you will get an idea what exactly I am saying. So there are a lot of myth which gets busted the moment you see the Topper script and you realize it's very human and it is very much possible to clear this exam. ठीक है? So let's quickly have a look. So my job is not to discuss syllabus here because you all have the access to syllabus. All I just wanted to show that just prepare at least a 250-word write-up on every topic which is mentioned in the syllabus. That is the basic minimum that is supposed to be done. Every topic which is there in the syllabus, each and every term, 250-word write-up should be prepared, that in case a conventional question comes, then how you will be able to answer that. So that has to be taken care of. For example, sociological thinkers, let us talk about it. So everything is clearly mentioned that if it talks about Marx, it says mode of production, it says class struggle, it says alienation, it says historical materialism. So each and every topic, the content has to be prepared beforehand. Is that very clear? So that I wanted to draw your attention to. Similarly, system of kinship, just have a look. The last line, it says contemporary trends. So you have to be prepared. So if UPSC asks you question that in the light of recent judgment on live-in relationship, what would be the future of marriage and family, we should not be surprised, right? Because contemporary trend is a part of your syllabus. It's just that we have to be prepared with it. Now, so the first thing that we talked about is, so I'm not delving into the syllabus part because obviously you have to do it at your end, but all I just wanted to highlight is make sure that every topic that you have in your syllabus, you prepare at least a 250-word write-up. I'll get to the point that how to prepare that write-up. Give me some time. Now, the next thing is why previous year questions. See, you need to understand that if you ask me, although I didn't do that when I was preparing for my own attempt, but now when I'm teaching, I realize that previous year questions are so handy. It actually gives you a direction that in what direction a topic has to be prepared. So it makes your work easier. And I'll tell you something, it's a very human nature, it's a very human tendency of students that we believe, I also have been in your place, we believe let's first complete the syllabus. Let's first prepare. And then we are going to solve previous year questions, because then it would give us a sense of motivation. You know, otherwise if you're not prepared and if you look at the previous year question, it might be very intimidating or we can get demotivated. So this is what is the agenda. And that's with most of us. But what we don't realize is that UPSC preparation is slightly different from what we have done in our graduation or postgrad, right? UPSC syllabus is not very limited. Even if it is limited, the ambit of asking the questions is quite wide. Okay? So waiting for the course to get completed and then to look at previous year questions can be slightly challenging. Because you might not reach that stage only. That becomes a challenge because you don't only have to study optional or you don't only have to study GS. You have to prepare like pre, mains, and then also so many papers have to be prepared. So then it becomes a challenge. So a smart strategy says, look at the syllabus. Based on every topic in the syllabus, look at previous year question. And try to understand that if I am preparing the topic of stratification, then in what capacity I have to prepare. For example, the stratification topic, you studied what is stratification, what are different dimensions of stratification, then sociological theories on stratification, then functionalist theory, conflict theory, you studied all of that. But what you didn't focus on was the comparative analysis. You did not focus on the compare, contrast kind of questions. For example, they might ask you that compare and contrast Weber's theory of stratification with that of Karl Marx. Or they might ask you Marx's understanding of capitalism, to what extent it is different from Weber's conception of capitalism. Are you getting the point? Similarly, they might ask you with respect to division of labor. They might ask you in context of anomy, that to what extent Merton's concept of deviance is different or similar to that of Durkheim's concept of anomy. So, उस तरह से हमने सोचा ही नहीं और एग्जाम में आ गया. ऐसा नहीं है that you won't be able to write, but then you need to understand we have time crunch. We have to be prepared for such questions beforehand, and that becomes a challenge. This challenge can be resolved if you have an understanding of previous year questions. So previous year questions are very handy, not only because they give you a direction, they also helps you to streamline your preparation. And then most importantly, many a times the questions are repeated. So that also is like a win-win situation for us. So in that capacity, it is always advisable that one should go through their previous year questions. Why? Because often the questions are repeated. It helps you to streamline the preparation. Not only that, it gives you an idea that what exactly UPSC demands when a particular topic is prepared. And not only that, let us suppose you've studied your Marx, you've studied your Parson, you've studied your Merton. The moment you see previous year question, you will get an idea that where are you missing. For example, you've studied your entire Merton, you've studied. The question came how latent and manifest function can be applied or can help us to understand persistence of corruption in Indian society. And you were bold. You like, मैंने तो latent and manifest पढ़ा है, but इसको corruption से कैसे link करूं? Then they might, the moment you see, you've studied deviance theory of Merton, but you saw the question how deviance theory of Merton can be applied to traffic problem. Again, you were bowled over because you have studied deviance and you know it quite well, huh? But then you were not aware that how it can be used in the application-based questions. So the moment you look at the previous year questions, it helps you identify the shortcomings in your preparation and accordingly you can work on it. Is that very clear? So tomorrow if you get an application-based question, you would not be stumped. You would not be shocked. You would be like, Acha, I know how to, answer application-based question. Is that very clear? ठीक है? Now, just to substantiate my arguments, if you look at this, you will get an understanding how questions are repeated. For example, how do Karl Marx and Max Weber differ in their term of analysis of social stratification? That was asked in 2013. Similarly, differentiate between Marxian and Weberian theory of stratification. It was asked in 2015. Then what is Weberian critique of Marxist notion of social stratification? This was asked in 2017. And compare and contrast the contribution of Marx and Weber on social stratification in capitalist society. It was asked in 2019. So every alternative year, they have been asking the question where both Marx and Weberian understanding of social stratification has to be addressed. Is that clear? Similarly, just look at this. Theory of elite. Just look at this. 2018, what according to Pareto are the basic characteristics of elites? You need to discuss. Then in 2019, discuss the concept of circulation of elites. That is 2019. Then 2020, according to Mills, elite rule is institutional terms rather than psychological terms. And you have to comment on that. Then 2021, critically examine the relevance of Pareto's theory of circulation of elite in the present scenario. So can you just see that consecutively, every year, 2018, 19, 20, 21, they have been asking the question with respect to elite. Similarly, you have kinship system. So in 2017, I didn't add more to it, but there are these questions are often repeated. For example, the question on family and household, the question on Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, the question on sociology as a science, or sociology, can it be value free, right? Or science and tech or science and technology as a medium of social change, education as a medium of social change, dependency theory. These are few areas which have been asked like on a very, very repetitive basis, right? So, similarly, science and technology. So if you can have a look at it, science and technology are major source accelerating the process of social change. Examine science and technology as agent of social change. Critically analyze the role of science and technology in bringing about social change. So can you see the repetition which is happening? So this is what we were talking about, that how the questions are repeated. So without fail, so whatever we have discussed so far, first and foremost, paste your syllabus right in front of you. Identify each and every term which is there in the syllabus. Make sure you have at least 250 words write up on every term mentioned in the syllabus. In case question comes, you can write something. That's first thing. Second thing is to understand that what kind of content has to be prepared. The focus has to be on previous year questions. And based on previous year questions, you are going to prepare your content. That if you are preparing stratification, if you are preparing social change, if you are preparing the theories, in what capacity it has to be prepared. And same holds true for paper 1 as well as paper 2. That is the importance of previous year questions. The next thing that we need to focus, which I said will be, that is importance of notes making. This is one thing which I have observed in this year's Toppers talk. They have been talking about it time and again. I know there are a lot of people who are not very comfortable with the idea of note making, and most of us don't even realize that what actually constitute notes making. Okay? See, you need to understand. There are two kinds of people who are watching this session. Either you have decided to take a coaching and you are taking coaching for your optional, or you are the one who have decided that you are not going to take any coaching, but you're going to prepare on your own. Absolutely no issues. Now see, one set of students, let me first address those who have taken the coaching. If you have taken a coaching, obviously you would have got the material, right? So the material is already there. So you don't have to prepare a detailed note. Right? Material is already at your disposal. The classroom notes which have been given by your respective teachers, you already have that. Now from that classroom notes, from the printed material, you have to extract the content so that it is easy for you to consolidate the content at one place. It is easy for you to revise the content at the time of examination. वो बड़ी-बड़ी booklets और class notes एक साथ revise करना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. और सबसे बड़ी बात है, there are a lot many developments which are happening around. There might be lot many case studies which have happened. There might be you are getting access to some new set of content which you want to add to your answer to further enrich the value of it. In that situation, it is very important that you have to have your own notes. That's one side of the story. So whatever material you've got, उसी को detail में लिखना मत शुरू कर देना, because already notes have been provided to you. From there, sorry, from there you have to extract, and I'll show how the extraction has to be done. ठीक है? Now, on the other side, we have students who are not going to take any coaching. They are going to prepare on their own. Absolutely no issues. So, when you are going to start with your preparation, let us suppose you've read your NCRTs, 11th and 12th. The second stage, you started reading the IGNOU material. IGNOU material is simple, basic yet very effective material. Okay? So you started reading your IGNOU material, or let us say you have done selective reading of some books. So in your situation, you would have to make at least 3 stages of notes. The first would be note making, which other students might have done in their classroom coaching. So you would be doing it on your own. That is the first stage of note making. The second stage of note making would be adding more content to your already prepared content from the basic material to further enrich it. Because you are not taking any coaching, so definitely you would be relying on the basic material and the advanced material. So let us say the basic material is your NCERT and IGNOU, and let us say your advanced material would be selective reading of certain books in paper 1 and paper 2. So these 2 stages you have done. The third stage would be extracting the content from your notes, so that it would be that third stage of note making that you would be keeping with you, and you would be revising it again and again and again, because that content would help you reproduce whatever you have prepared so far in the examination. Is that very clear? So there are 2 set of people, one who are taking coaching, one who are not taking coaching. So those who are not taking any classes, it is specifically for you, have 2 stages. One, basic books. Second, selective reading of advanced books to further enrich your content. And final third stage, which I mean, basically what I mean by the third stage is mind maps. Extracting the material, the flow charts, I'll show it to you. And that is how you can prepare your content. Is that very clear? Let me show it to you. See, many people, I know a lot of people who don't believe in writing. As in they can write the answers, but who don't believe in note making or writing. They just read the content, they learn the content, and they try to reproduce that. Some of you have achieved success through that also. There are some who have done that in past also. But see, you need to understand, when we are emphasizing on the importance of note making, there is a reason behind that. See, have you ever tried making notes? Forget about optional, even GS also. Have you ever tried making notes? When you make notes on your own, I'm not talking about that copy pasting thing. Nahi, wo main note making ko nahi manti. When you sit down diligently and prepare notes, it can be e-notes as well, but you are not copy pasting. I'm not saying that. So have you ever noticed, when you prepare notes on your own, your thought process develops. You start questioning yourself. Okay, what is ideal type? It's a mental construct. Is it the replication of reality? No. It can corroborate with reality, but it is not the exact replica of reality. Why? Because it is one-sided accentuation of reality. Who decides what is the basis of ideal type? It is the perspective of the researcher. Why do we even construct ideal type? That is because reality is too complex to understand in its entirety. So when you create an ideal type, it becomes an easy tool to ensure or act as a classificatory device, as a comparative tool to arrive at a conclusion or a generalization. Is that very clear? So when you make your notes, you start talking to yourself. Your thought process gets organized. Many a time students come and say, "Ma'am, याद नहीं हो रहा." Thinkers याद ही नहीं हो रहे. उसका reason है, हम लिख के नहीं पढ़ते. I'll tell you something. The more you write, the more you will remember. We have a habit, we just flip through the pages. कौन बार लिखे? You would not believe. I started my preparation in 2009. This is 2022. So years of my preparation plus years of my teaching. I started teaching in 2013. So almost the 10th year of my teaching. Even today, I study and I write in study. Because human mind है, चीजें याद नहीं रहती हैं. If I study something today and for 2-3 months I don't revise it, I would not be able to recall it. It's a very human nature, right? So you have to write and study. So the more you are making your notes, the more your thoughts are getting organized. The more is your comprehension and retention ability. I'll give you a small example to make you understand. So it so happened, I was going through the symbolic interactionism once. So then I was just talking to myself. What is interactionism? It deals with interaction. What is interaction? It is action between individuals. This action is meaningful to those who are involved in that process of interaction. And for that interaction to be meaningful, there has to be some common symbols which has to be shared between the actors. But just by knowing the symbols would not make the interaction meaningful. You should be able to understand and interpret the meanings of others. And for that, you have to participate in the process of role taking. That is imaginatively placing yourself in the position of others and try to understand their response. On the basis of interpretation, they will be making their response. Similarly, now the latter is going to take your role, interpret the response, and then it would be decided whether the interaction has to be closed or it would be continued. Now, this process of role-taking leads to development of concept of self. And the self is not inborn. It develops through two stages. One is the play stage, other is the game stage. And at the same time, the self also consists of two parts. One is I and the second is me. Is this very clear? The moment I see this, then I thought that if the question comes as it has been asked in the past, so what do you mean by I and me? So can the comparative analysis be asked? In case, then how I have to prepare my content? But before I reach to that point, did you understand what I have done in this note making? It gives you clarity. Now, do you realize within 2 minutes, the entire symbolic interactionism of Mead is revised? This is how it has to be done. Now, reading those paragraphs, reading those underlined books, it becomes such a challenging thing. But through these flowcharts, it can be so easy while you are revising your content. Not only that, it gives you exact understanding of the theory the moment you write it down on a piece of paper. At the same time, there's one thing which I have believed, that note making also makes you more creative. कभी कभी क्या होता है, जब आप नोट्स बना रहे होते हो ना, तो बनाते बनाते डायग्राम्स आ जाते हैं, बनाते बनाते फ्लो चार्ट्स आ जाते हैं, बनाते बनाते टैब्यूलर रिप्रेजेंटेशन आ जाता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, लेट अस से दैट I'm sorry for the cough. So let us say if we take this. So I told you I and me, right? So we will be talking about this later also. So I and me. So when this was happening, we thought that when this comparative analysis has to be done, let me compare them on the basis of certain parameters. Do you realize that when you are comparing two entities, those two entities have to be compared based on certain parameters. It should not be compared in like randomly. Okay? So if the question comes with respect to capitalism, what is capitalism? Basis of capitalism, emergence of capitalism, consequence of capitalism, desirability. Similarly, stratification, comparative analysis. What is the definition of stratification? Basis of stratification, structure of stratification, consequence of stratification, desirability and inevitability of stratification. You have two sets of theories, conflict and functionalist perspective. Did you get the point? Similarly, I and me. What is the definition? What is a layman understanding of I and me? Is there an element of creativity? Yes, definitely in I. It is the creative aspect of self. Are you aware about your action when it comes down to I? No, you are not. Whereas when we talk about me, it involves a conscious responsibility. Hence, we are aware about our action. What is it with respect to change? So definitely the I aspect of self initiates the change, whereas the me aspect promotes status quo. Similarly with respect to time scale. Similarly with respect to predictability. Similarly in context of examples. So when you prepare such things, automatically you will be thinking about examples. बिकॉज आप खुद से बात करते हो ना यार ये आई पढ़ रहे हैं इसका एग्जाम्पल क्या होगा, ये मी पढ़ रहे हैं इसका एग्जाम्पल क्या होगा, ये लेटेंट मैनिफेस्ट फंक्शन का एग्जाम्पल क्या होगा, ये रेफरेंस ग्रुप को मैं कहां अप्लाई कर सकता हूं. तो जब आप नोट मेकिंग करते हैं ना, तब आप रोट लर्निंग नहीं करते हैं. दैट इज द डिफरेंस एंड दैट व्हाट मेक्स योर प्रिपरेशन मोर एनरिच्ड. सो दिस इज व्हाट आई हैव बीन टेलिंग एवरी स्टूडेंट टाइम एंड अगेन, प्लीज डू दैट. सी आई विल टेल यू अनदर वे ऑफ डूइंग इट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, ये थोड़ा सा ब्लर आ रहा है, मैं I hope it is visible. Anyway, if this is not visible, you can just go on my Telegram channel. there I've decided I'll upload all the mind maps that I am making. So before your mains, there would be considerable mind maps which would be uploaded. But at the same time, you just don't have to depend on these mind maps. Through these mind maps, you have to learn how the mind maps have to be made for the purpose of revision, for the purpose of consolidation of notes at one place, for the purpose of lending it more creativity and organizational skills. And then you are going to do it on your own. ठीक है? So just have a look at it. अब जैसे मैं रॉबर्ट के मर्टन के perspective की बात करूं, can you see the screen, right? So it is talking about, you know, the background, how he tries to balance out the fact and the theory, how he gave the idea of middle range, then how the researcher should follow the principle of kudos, then how he was known as neo-functionalist, how he has modified, codified the classical functionalism, where he talked about the postulate of, or he has challenged the universal unity, functional indispensability, universal functionalism. Then he had given his work in the field of manifest and latent function, reference group, conformity and deviance. ठीक है? Then latent and manifest. Can you see this? Latent and manifest. So obviously the background has been provided to us that how earlier the functionists, they looked at manifest function, but now they had ignored the unintended consequences. Then he talked about manifest as well as the latent function. The examples have been given to you. Can you see the example on the screen? For example, in context of examination, the manifest function is, it is going to reward your talent or your hard work by means of examination. But if I talk about latent function, so it is institutionalizing hierarchy in the society. Similarly, can you see here, I have written examples, for example, media, the latent and the manifest function, school, latent and the manifest function, beauty contest, latent and the manifest function. But hold, I was trying to squeeze this content on the screen. But in that process, did you notice that we end up making a diagram? It's a chart, where on one hand, we are giving the examples. So can examples be written like this in your answer of latent and manifest? You got a question on latent and manifest. And the significance of latent and manifest, concepts of latent and manifest function, how it helps to take sociological understanding beyond the commonsensical perception, something like that. So in that context, examples would be required to justify your argument. Can I give my examples in this format? So when you make your notes, you don't even realize, but you end up having a better organizational understanding. This is what I was trying to tell you. Similarly, conformity and deviance. Can you see conformity and deviance? This is the background. These are other theories of conformity and deviance. See, if you have prepared a basic sociology, that is why I chose Merton to show the mind map, that everybody might have gone through the Merton. Agar sociology shuru bhi kari hai, so the first topic that you do are those 6 thinkers, right? So you might have studied Merton, and that is why I have picked up this. So if I talk about the theory of conformity and deviance, again, you have a diagram, again, you have this table. So this can help you in understanding that how this can be arranged on the examination sheet. So this is a very basic example. And when you are doing it, within this chart only, we have given the examples. For example, conformist, the student of a school. So that can be an example of conformist, right? Similarly, the one who has rejected the means but accepted the goals, that is, you are innovating. So mafia who tries to gain the wealth, right? Similarly, you have accepted the means but you have rejected the goals, ritualist, so bureaucratic, red tapeism. And similarly, you have your rebellion as well as retreatist. Retreatist is a homeless person and rebellion is a social reformer or a revolutionary. So within that diagram only, we have added the example. It will help you save some space and it will break the monotony of the presentation of your content. Similarly, we have reference group. So this is the background of the reference group, how different scholars, whether it was the Hyman's perspective, the Mead's perspective, the Cooley's perspective, everything has been mentioned as a background. But what are reference group? What is the significance of reference group? The different types which are affecting the reference group? The middle range theory, everything has been mentioned here. Is that very clear for everyone? So this is how the note making can be done. But that is not the only way. I know many of you out there are now more relying on the e-notes, that is the digital notes. So in that situation also, you can prepare your notes like this. All I want to say is that the note making should not be those detailed elaboration of the content which you anyway are reading in your standard books. That is not what we call note making. And even if you're doing that, that is the first and the second stage of note making. The final note making which you are going to refer before your examination is something on which you can depend. I'll tell you one example of note making. ये सब upload हो जाएगा, ये आप देख लेना. This is what I wanted to show. See, many of you might be thinking कि paper 2 के लिए क्या करें, ठीक है? तो जब आप paper 1 की तैयारी करते हो, so obviously the conceptual understanding is getting cleared, right? Along with that, the paper 2 content can also be prepared. For example, हमें note making करनी थी, हमने patriarchy पे notes बना लिए, Anne Oakley, Sylvia Walby, Shulamit Firestone, सबका perspective वगैरह डाल दिया. What is the functional perspective when it comes down to marriage as an institution, family as an institution? What is the feminist criticism which is being given, right? हमने वो सब कर लिया. Now it comes down to the application part, right? It comes down to the application in context of Indian society or in general the current applications. In that situation, you can get hold of the case studies which are available in the market or in the platform as in the internet. Okay? For example, if you look at the screen, okay? So it is talking about a topic, women in India. So we have talked about all the basic understanding nuances. Then with respect to one perspective, we have given the perspective provided by Krishna Raj, or we have quoted the different reports which have been there. Then we can talk about the case study. So whether it is case study on women empowerment in South Asia, whether it is Sydney Schuller and Syed Hashmi's case study on women empowerment in Bangladesh, or on the similar lines, we have Leslie Kalman case study of women movement in India. So this can be referred. Similarly, Karuna Ahmed, Rama Joshi, women among tribal communities. Now, this is what is note making. आपको complete statements लिख के notes नहीं बनाने, फिर revise क्या ही करोगे, right? So, notes जब हम बनाते हैं, final notes, we make sure that we are adding those most important aspects which we are going to use in the examination in case the question comes. However, वो जो explanatory aspect होता है ना, that is there to understand, वो नहीं लिखते हैं हम notes में. वो तो आप first और second stage में पढ़ चुके हो. तो ये जो final note making की मैं बात कर रही हूँ, ये जब आप बनाओगे तो you have to keep in mind that you are only writing those important keywords which you are going to reproduce in the examination. This you tend to remember. और bold कर लेना, अगर किसी thinker की case study है या कोई data है, bold it so that when you revise it twice, thrice, 4 times, then while reproducing that content in the paper, you would not have an iota of a doubt in your mind. Is that very clear for everyone? Okay? Now, enough about previous year questions, enough about note making. The most important thing now is that in case you want to maximize your score in sociology, it cannot be done until and unless you are not practicing your answer writing. So the most important pillar of maximizing your score in any paper, and specifically in optional like sociology, is answer writing. Is that very clear? Now, before I begin this, before you start understanding the nuances of answer writing, I would ask you to please promise yourself that every day from today onwards, you are going to write 2 answers. Every day without fail. Do you realize it is not going to take much time of yours? हाँ, हो सकता है शुरू में टाइम लगेगा. पहली बार जब आंसर लिखते हैं, आधा घंटा लग सकता है एक आंसर लिखने में. उससे ज्यादा भी लग सकता है. Absolutely no issues. But you have to start doing that, right? So every day 2 answers have to be written, and every 15th day you have to at least attempt 1 set of paper. The reason is that many a times you develop that quality of answer writing, but then you are not able to develop the speed at which the answer writing has to be done. So on daily basis, when you are writing your answers, it is going to improve the quality of your answers. But when you are going to attempt those mocks at one given period of time, when 19 answers you are going to attempt in 180 minutes, that is going to shape your speed management. That is going to finally ensure that in your final day or on the final day of the examination, you don't miss out on any question. I'll share a personal experience here. So when I used to give my attempt, there were two optionals, PubAd and Sociology. There used to be two optionals. We have to choose two optionals, and I had public administration and sociology. So with public administration, I used to give a test series, and every time, some or the other reason, I used to miss out on a 20-marker question. But then I was very chilled out. कभी खुद ही नहीं लिखती थी, कभी कोई आंसर लिख रही हूँ तो एक 20-marker मिस हो गया, क्योंकि 20-marker मिस करने के बाद भी I was scoring like really well in the test series. So ठीक है. You know what happened? On the day of examination, the same thing got repeated. I don't know how and what mismanagement I did. I exactly missed out on one 20-marker question. So we don't even realize, but what you are doing in your mocks, many a time the same experience gets replicated. In fact, I was hearing to this topper's talk by Aishwarya, rank 4, and he was telling that how just before his mains examination, I think he was sharing his experience that just before the mains examination, I think 15 days back, he appeared for that Abhyas test. Abhyas ही होता है ना, हाँ, जिसमें तो mains का test लिखा था, and in Abhyas he scored 450, right, in GS paper, all the 4 papers, and coincidentally or very surprisingly, his final score in his mains is also 450. So can you see that, right? So it is very important that you have to write or you have to work upon your quality. At the same time, you have to work upon your quantity as well. Because if you are not able to finish the paper, you are already outside the list. Because one mark also matter in this examination. Is that very clear? Okay. So now let's talk about answer writing. And if you're going to listen to this answer writing session for next 1 hour, so I am assuming that you are promising me also and you're promising yourself also that you are going to start writing 2 answers every day. Please do that. Okay? Chalo, let's start. See, every answer has 2 components. One is the content, other is the context. You need to understand, you and me, although preparing for sociology only, can have very different content. I'll show it to you through examples also. You and me can have very different content. Okay? We can quote different scholars, we can quote different examples, we can have altogether different approach towards a question. But where you and me will be similar to each other is the context in which the question is being asked. For example, if you can look at the screen, first I'm dealing with the contextual aspect. You need to understand, let us say, Karl Marx's theory of class struggle, or how science and technology brings about social change, or any which question for that matter. You need to understand that your approach to the question, as in the thinkers that you are using, the examples that you are giving, the case study you are mentioning, right, the weightage that you are giving. For example, there is functional theory of stratification. Now, which functional theory you are giving more emphasis and which function, for example, linear theory of social change. Which linear theory, एक 10 नंबर का क्वेश्चन है, हर linear theory तो नहीं लिख सकते, आप भी कोई 4 लिखोगे, मैं भी कोई 4 लिखूंगी, कुछ similar होंगी, कुछ changes होंगी. Are you getting the point, right? So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the content can vary, but context cannot. Right? So the first aspect of context is your key word. Okay? So there are 4 parameters to understand the context of answer writing. The first and foremost is the keyword. The second is whether the question is theory based, it's application based, or it is the combination of 2. The third is, does the question has various subparts or it is a single statement question? And the fourth thing is, what is the ultimate essence of the question? Is that clear? And whether that essence have been answered or not. How you choose to answer the essence, that is totally different. But then you have to make sure that the essence is answered. We'll take each of these things one by one. To begin with, let us talk about keyword. Okay? Now, many must be wondering कि इतना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड होता है सोशियोलॉजी की तैयारी या ऑप्शनल की तैयारी करना, कहाँ टाइम मिलेगा टू थिंक अबाउट व्हाट पीपल आर एक्सपेक्टिंग थ्रू कीवर्ड्स, राइट? सो there is one thing which I really want to request everyone out there, even if you don't belong to sociology optional and you happen to watch this session, please understand, keyword is not there to intimidate you. Keywords are not there, the tail word, discuss, comment, analyze, those words are not there to intimidate you. Those words are not there to further complicate your answer writing. Those words are actually there to help you to understand what is the demand of the question. For example, elaborate on Karl Marx's theory of class struggle. Simple. What am I going to do? Here the tail word is elaborate. And elaborate says that the counter arguments are not required only. Elaborate says this is the concept, this is the proposition, and you just need to elaborate on that. Here the concept is Karl Marx's theory of class struggle. Elaborate. What was Karl Marx's theory of class struggle? Without mentioning the counter arguments. As in, the criticism is not required in this question. However, if the question would have been, critically examine Karl Marx's theory of class struggle, discuss Karl Marx's theory of class struggle, or assess to what extent Karl Marx's theory of class struggle holds empirical validity. Did you get my point? In that situation, counter arguments are required. So instead of seeing these tail words as a burden, you should actually see them as an effort to complement your efforts of answer writing. Is that very clear? Okay. So these keywords are very important to understand what exactly is expected. Can you see all the keywords which I've written here? Let's start with the first one, that is define. Okay. Define says to give in the precise term the meaning of something. I'll tell you something. You would not get define randomly. You would get define, you would get to define certain terms where there are different perspectives which are existing, where there are certain problems which are existing with respect to the interpretation or the perspective with respect to that concept. For example, define civil society. Now you have multiple interpretations, you have different set of definitions, and many a times it is not being seen in a positive light also. There is a concept of counter civil society given by Neera Chandok, right? So the point which I'm trying to make here is that when you get to define something, it does not mean that you are defining, you're just giving one set of definition. Obviously, you are giving the precise meaning of that. Define patriarchy. So you will give patriarchy refers to system of social structures and practices by which the men oppresses, exploit or suppress women. But that is one aspect, right? You have to give different interpretations which are existing with respect to patriarchy. How one of the manifestation of patriarchy was confining women to the domestic chores. It was believed when she's going to step out, work in the labor market, the notions of patriarchy would be challenged. But how it was being critiqued or questioned when Sylvia Walby gave the perspective of how private patriarchy is giving way to public patriarchy. Is this very clear for everyone? So define says that you have to, in precise term, define the meaning of the concept. At the same time, in case there exists some issue with that particular definition, that also needs to be highlighted. Along with that, you are going to give the different perspectives. Is that clear? So you are defining civil society. At the same time, the role of civil society, let us say it says that civil society is strengthening democracy. However, this role of civil society has been questioned. So there is a problem with the definition of civil society or the functioning of the civil society, and hence you are providing a counter perspective also, or the different perspective which is existing with respect to that concept. And that is what is known as define. Is that very clear? So define often is associated with those terms on which you can have different perspectives. So define capitalism, define stratification, social stratification, define patriarchy, define civil society, define pressure group. You might get such questions. Is that clear? Okay. Now next is the very common tail word which is being asked, and that is discuss. Just read that. I'll have some water. Just read what is discuss. If you can see what we mean by discuss, it clearly says that discuss refers to a written debate. In fact, I believe that discuss is the easiest tail word when it comes down to answer writing. One thing which has to be taken care of is that in context of questions where discuss is there, you have to conclude. Conclusion is mandatory. Read it, I'll come back to this. Discuss is like a written debate. There is an argument. Discuss the contemporary relevance of Durkheim's theory of religion. Right? There is a proposition, Durkheim's theory of religion's contemporary relevance. For the motion, against the motion, you are discussing. There is an argument. Right? You have to establish the contemporary relevance of Durkheim's theory of religion. You have to establish that, right? Now, this argument, you will present for the motion, you will present against the motion. At the same time, you have to give examples also to justify your arguments. So, for the motion, against the motion. And based on whatever you have discussed, you have to arrive at a conclusion. So while writing the answers where discuss is the tail word, just remember two things. It is a debate. So for the motion, against the motion, positives, negatives, advantages, disadvantages. So it is like a written debate. But the second important aspect which is indispensable, and that is based on what you have discussed, you have to arrive at conclusion. That is mandatory. Is this very clear for everyone? Okay? Now, look at the third thing, that is explain. Now, explain means that if a concept is being asked to explain, you have to attempt the concept in detail. Why that concept exists, how that concept exists, where that concept can be used, what do you mean by that concept, right? Everything has to be written. It has to be explained in a lucid manner. For example, I'll give you an example to explain. Now let us say, explain Karl Marx's conception of transition from class in itself to class for itself. When we say explain, it means each and every term has to be explained. This transition has to be explained. So what is the conception of class? How for Karl Marx, class is the most dominant social group which is present in the history of all human societies. How there are two dimensions of class. One is the subjective dimension, other is the objective dimension. One refers to class in itself, where you share the same relations with the means of production, whereas on the other hand, when there is a development of true consciousness of the exploitation which one is subjected to, then it is referred as class for itself. This transition to class in itself to class for itself, it happens in the capitalist stage. Why it happens in capitalist stage? Because there exists inherent contradiction, where on one hand the surplus is getting usurped, leading to exploitation of others. On the other hand, there is social production and individual ownership. Now this process of transition from class in itself to class for itself is speed up or is fastened because of certain developments in a capitalist capitalist society, whether it is homogenization, pauperization, immiserization, proletarization, leading to polarization. And when finally there is subjective realization of objective reality, class in itself transforms into class for itself, which paves the way for proletarian revolution, and which established the dictatorship of proletariats, something like that. Did you get the point? Explain करने को बोला था, इसमें critique की जरूरत ही नहीं है, but every nuance have to be explained. What is class? Two dimensions of class, how it is evolving from one stage to other, why it is emerging in a capitalist society, what aspects are affecting this transition, and finally, what would be the consequence of this transition. Are you getting the point? You are explaining every series of event which is happening here, every key term which is there, so which has to be explained, which is appropriate, is getting explained. So why it is occurring, how it is occurring, in what context it is occurring, everything needs to be explained. That is the meaning of the keyword explain. Is that very clear? Then elaborate we have already discussed. To give in more detail, in context of elaborate, sorry, you don't have to give the counter argument. Is that clear? Then illustrate. Illustrate basically means giving examples. So here illustrate also, if you are illustrating something, right? So illustration means you are explaining something, but through examples, through data, through statistics, so as to give more credibility to your explanation. So illustrate means giving credibility to your explanation through examples, statistics, data. That is what we mean when we say illustrate. Is that very clear for everyone? ठीक है? Then let me first take assess, and then, so assess, to what extent, how far. It is the similar thing. Is that clear? Now, let me give you an example. To what extent modernity is breeding religious fundamentalism? See? How far modernity is responsible for emergence of religious fundamentalism? Assess the impact of modernity on religious fundamentalism. In all the three cases, answer remains the same. Is that clear? ठीक है. So assess the impact of modernity. What is modernity? What is religious fundamentalism? Then how modernity leading to religious fundamentalism, and how it is not leading to religious, or how it is not the only reason behind the emergence of religious fundamentalism. How it can be a necessary condition but not the sufficient condition. That is one example which can be given. Did you get the point? Similarly, to what extent? Similarly, how far? So in all the three cases, the answer remains the same. Is it making sense? And in all the three cases, you have to finally conclude that how or to what extent you are in agreement with the original proposition. Lastly, you have to conclude that whether modernity is leading to religious fundamentalism or not, and then is it the only factor or it is one of the factor? Is it the most significant factor or there are other important factors? So whatever is your stand, whether you are fully agreeing to the original proposition, you are partially agreeing to the proposition, or you are negating the proposition, everything has to be written in the conclusion. That is mandatory in the questions like assess, to what extent, how far. Is this very clear for everyone? Now, read the first, compare and contrast. See, in both the conditions, compare and contrast, you have to compare, as in, I know, you have to draw the similarities and differences. But the only thing is, if the question says contrast, then more concentration has to be done on the differences, right? The more concentration has to be on the dissimilarities which are existing. Whereas in compare, you can give equal importance to similarity and differences. But when it says contrast, more emphasis has to be there on dissimilarity, and then you can write about some aspect of similarity, but very briefly. Is that very clear? Now comes the question, examine and analyze, right? Let me see if we have any other. Okay, to what extent we have already talked about. Comment की बात कर लेते हैं. The only difference in discuss and comment is when we are discussing, based on our discussion, we have to conclude, right? But when it comes down to comment, comment means your opinion. So basically, you have to give your opinion with respect to the statement or with respect to whatever question is being asked, and your opinion needs to be justified through evidences. Is that clear? So if in my opinion I say that Marx theory doesn't hold relevance in contemporary times, or if I believe that Marx theory of stratification is oversimplified assumption, whereas on the other hand Weber's theory has more contemporary relevance, so that's my opinion. But just quoting my opinion would not be enough to fetch me marks. In that situation, I have to make sure I am giving sufficient evidences to justify my opinion. So that becomes very important. Is that very clear for everyone? Is it making sense? Okay. Now we have two words here. One is examine and other is analyze, right? Now, I'll make it easy for you to understand. Let me take a question. Feminization of agriculture has led to women empowerment, quote unquote, right? It's a statement. Critically analyze this statement in context of Indian society. Feminization of agriculture has led to women empowerment, inverted commas, and critically analyze the statement in context of Indian society. Now, when the question says analyze, okay, one disclaimer. Critically analyze does not mean to criticize. It just means in-depth analysis. It doesn't mean to criticize, right? So many a times you would get the question in which criticism is not there. So unnecessarily don't burden yourself. Critically means in-depth analysis. That's it. However, if the term critically is written afterwards, I know slightly complicated ho raha hai, but just try to bear with it. There are two ways of writing. Critically analyze, analyze critically. Okay? So either it can be suffix or the prefix. So in case it is critically analyze, it means in-depth analysis. And if it says analyze critically, then it means you are focusing more on the counter argument, as in the critical part, the criticizing part has to be focused more. Like 60% would be the criticism and 40% would be the other side of argument. Whereas in critically analyze, it depends whichever tangent you want to take it. So I hope the difference is clear. Now let's come back to critically analyze. It says that every term in the statement has to be explored. It has to be defined. And their interrelationship has to be established. Feminization of agriculture has led to women empowerment. What is feminization of agriculture? What is women empowerment? Has feminization of agriculture led to women empowerment? And how feminization of agriculture has not led to women empowerment? And finally, you are concluding. Simple, that is critically analyze. Can you look at the statement? It says that break the issue into constituent parts. Look in depth at each part using the supporting argument against or for. At the same time, try to interrelate to one another. This is what it means, right? But when it, so that is more about horizontal coverage. When it comes down to examine, when it comes down to examine, you have to choose certain dimensions. For example, there was a question UPSC asked, examine any two social theories or any two sociological theories of social change. That was the question. You have to examine. Now, what is social change? We all know, and since social change has been one of the eminent social phenomena, there have been various sociological theories to explain the phenomena of social change. Simple? Tick. Now, there were some linear theories, cyclical theories, conflict theories, structural functionalist theory. All these theories were there. You have to examine any two. Now, while you are examining the theories, there has to be certain elements on which you want to focus. that what is the perspective behind that particular theory of social change, how they are viewing social change. What according to them are the factors responsible for social change? What are the consequences of social change according to that particular sociological theory? Right? ठीक है ना? Whether the social change is considered as desirable or not. What is the direction of social change according to that particular perspective? So what is the perspective, what is the basis, what is the direction, what is the consequence of social change, and whether it is desirable or not. So in Examine, I have chosen these 5 dimensions. I have decided that I will discuss my social change theory on the basis of these 5 parameters. And on these 5 parameters, I'm going to apply those 2 sociological theories, whether linear, cyclical, functional, or conflict theory of social change. Did you get my point? So Examine means you are having a closed look, you are establishing those key facts which can be used to explain or examine that concept, and those key facts have to be examined in detail. Is that very clear? Look at the screen again. Ek second. Look at the screen. That what Examine exactly stands for. It says you have to look in close detail and establish the key facts which are important surrounding the topic. Here my topic is theory of social change. What are the key facts surrounding this perspective based on which social change theory has been discussed? What are the factors responsible for social change? What is the direction of social change? What are the consequences which will happen after that social change takes place, and its desirability? And then you should try to offer reasons as to why these things are important. Obviously, in order to understand the theory of social change, you have to understand the context in which the change is happening, the direction in which the change is happening, the factors which are responsible. Only then you can assess and bring about the comparison between different theories of social change. Is that very clear? And then you can talk about that. Let us say you have examined 2 theories of social change, and while concluding in the Examine question you can write that these are just 2 perspectives of social change, there exist other perspectives as well. For example, और एक आध criticism दे दो जो आपने 2 theories discuss करी हैं उसका, because then you can actually explaining the different ways in which that concept can be construed. There are other ways of discussing social change as well, क्योंकि यहाँ पे तो आप सिर्फ 2 theories examine कर रहे हो ना. ठीक है? So did you get my point? Are the keywords clear for everyone? ठीक? Now, once we have discussed the keywords, the next topic is theory and application. Sorry. Now, theory or application. The question can be out and out theoretical question, it can be out and out application based question, or it can be partly theory and partly application based question. For example, distinguish between latent and manifest functions, and also how these concepts can be used to explain the persistence of corruption in India. Can you see it is a combination of theory and application? And let us say this question is 10 marker. Now, largely what happens is theory is one thing which we cannot afford to go wrong with. That is what I was talking to you in the beginning of the session, that there would be theoretical aspect which is very, very static portion and which is an expected thing. We cannot afford to go wrong with that, right? So if you know the theory, it will help you fetch some marks. Now, in theory, along with application-based question, it is very important to balance out the content. Let us suppose in this particular question, you just wrote the theory, right? That what are functions, then what are latent functions, what are manifest functions, and what is the significance of distinguishing between latent and manifest functions. And finally, in conclusion, you write that it has a lot of contemporary relevance. Latent and manifest functions can be used to explain the persistence of corruption in India. What will happen? Obviously, you will not fetch marks. Yes, definitely out of 10 mark, 2.5 mark, 2 marks would be given to you. इतनी मेहनत करिए latent manifest वगैरह बताने के लिए. But can I say that I would divide this in 2 parts, 4 plus 6. Prioritizing this, you have कोई hard and fast rule नहीं, आप 3 plus 7 भी कर सकते थे. ठीक है, तो you just have to do it in your mind that I would give 4 marks weightage to distinguishing between latent and manifest function, and then I would try to apply this feature in order to explain the persistence of corruption in India. Similarly, how the theory of deviance can be used to explain the traffic problem. Did you get the point? Right. So theory and application जहां पे clearly mentioned हो, ठीक है, वहां पे you have to prioritize how much weightage you are going to give to the theory, how much weightage you are going to give to the application part, right? But please remember, if let us say there is a question, how will you use Parsons-Agel model to discuss the problems of tribal society in India, or to understand the tribal society in India? This is the question, right? Do you realize that although it is application-based question, but until and unless you do not mention about Parsons-Agel framework, you have to write that in the introduction part. In case you don't do that, the application would not be easily understood by the examiner. So theory is very important to be written. Now the challenge is you have to prioritize how much weightage to the theory should be given. Whether you should complete the theory in 50 words or not, whether one entire page should be written on theory or not, that totally depends upon your prioritization. But in case there is a blend of theory plus application question, please learn to balance your answer. One disclaimer, do not forget to write the theory, because if you don't mention the theory, it would become very difficult for the examiner to understand how you have applied the, how you have ensured its application. One thing. Second thing is, the moment you write the theory, it is advantageous for you also. Why it is advantageous for you? Because while writing the theory, you slowly and gradually understand that how the application has to be brought about. So it becomes easier for us. Third thing, the most important thing, let us say we are not able to apply only, and we have no other choice. It was a compulsory question which was supposed to be attempted. Theory लिखाओ, कुछ तो number मिलेंगे, बूंद बूंद से घड़ा भरता है, right? So under all the 3 cases, theory writing is mandatory. But make sure if you're only writing the theory, you will not fetch marks, because here the main essence of the question is the application of the theory. Is this very clear for everyone? Is it making sense for everyone? Okay. Will you remember this? Now, there is another set of question which was asked last year, and that was the social significance of national education policy. This was the question which was asked last year by UPSC. Let's just have a look at it. I hope this is visible for everyone. Just have a look at it. It says sociological significance of national education policy. So obviously, Kasturi Rangan committee has put forward the draft which was later passed of national education policy. So what role national education policy is playing in the cognitive intellect and social welfare? So here the social significance had to be established of national education policy. It was an expected question. Many a times what happens is that we say that too general a question is being asked, very GS based question is being asked, क्योंकि application पूछ लिया है, right? But to write that application from a sociological perspective, it becomes important to add thinkers. Now, if you look at the content which we have tried to provide, there is a provision in national education policy which says early childhood care. which talks about socialization of young children and right to education for 3 to 6 years. Obviously, initially the right to education was 6 to 14 years, but since you're talking about early childhood care and education, although it is not guaranteeing you, but yes, definitely it is talking about right to education for the children in preschool age. Similarly, there is differential pedagogy for tribal students. So can we say it is addressing the concept of reproduction of culture? Cultural reproduction, that is Pierre Bourdieu's concept, right? So it is basically questioning or addressing the problem of reproduction of dominant culture. That was the concept by Pierre Bourdieu. Why? Because it is providing a differential pedagogy for tribal students so as to increase their learning outcome. So can you see that on one side, we have talked about, I think I should have given it a tabular representation also, that on one side I'm talking about new education policy ka component, and on the other side, the sociological significance of it. So that can also be done. For example, what I mean here is, guys, 1 second. So I could have done it like this also. That on one side, I am talking about the conceptions, or as in the parameters, the content of national education policy. On the other hand, I am talking about the sociological significance. And then you can discuss the points here. For example, the first point is differential pedagogy for tribal students. This is the content. And how it is helping the sociological significance is, it is going to address the issue of Pierre Bourdieu's reproduction of dominant culture. तो पीर बुर्दुए वगैरह डाल दिया, तो sociological perspective is being added. On one side, we are talking about the content of new education or national education policy. On the other hand, we are talking about the sociological significance. Again, let's come back to this. Now, the third thing, this is last year's UPSC question. So next, it says like Bal Bhavan and Chetna Kendras, it will reduce the rote learning, or what Ivan Illich called about passive consumption. So again, on one hand, we are talking about the provisions of national education policy. On the other hand, we are talking about the social significance. Similarly, there is a provision for 360-degree assessment, whether it is peer-to-peer, self-assessment, teacher-based assessment. So that 360-degree report card with strengths and weakness, it will help in demolishing what Ball and Ginn called the myth of meritocracy. So again, it is not only based on the grades that you are achieving, it is a holistic personality assessment. Similarly, special educational zones for poor region, it is going to address what Jyotsana Jha in Education India Private Limited had discussed about, that how poor are deprived of education. So these special educational zones would be created for those who are belonging to socially and economically deprived section of the society. Similarly, they have talked about gender inclusion funds, which will again enhance the access of education to the vulnerable sections of society, whether it is women or transgenders, right? So disparity in the education would be addressed. Similarly, foundational mission on literacy and numeracy would help in formation of human capital. Is that clear? Then there is a thrust on vocationalization and skill development, which will end the rigid separation between vocation and academics. At the same time, there are special sessions with vocational experts and industrial entrepreneurs. And all of this has been included, both these provisions, ending the rigid watertight compartmentalization as well as the training with the vocational expert. So through this, they are basically adding thrust to the vocationalization of the education, right? Similarly, what is the significance of this? It will enhance social mobility. I'm now adding the sociological significance. Social mobility, it will address the problem of feminization of poverty. It will break the caste-class nexus. It will result into emergence of Dalit entrepreneurship. It will reduce the rural distress migration. It will reduce the deviance among youth by constructive engagement. It will enhance the organic solidarity by specialization and interdependence. Hence, Hence, national education policy on one hand will prevent alienation, on the other hand, it will promote social mobility. Did you get the point? There are different ways of addressing the theory and application based question, and I have decided to give you enough time on this. Reason being, this is one area where a lot of us face problem. So is the sociological significance of national education policy? This was the question asked last year. So how could you have written, how could you have added sociological dimension? Did you get the point? कोई पहले से पढ़ के नहीं जाता है, जो already आपने education में पढ़ा था, चाहे वो reproduction of dominant culture हो, चाहे वो myth of meritocracy हो, चाहे वो passive consumption हो, this has to be used here. Then आप कुछ वो sociological terms use कर लो, social mobility हो गया, feminization of poverty हो गया, organic solidarity हो गया, alienation हो गया. Did you get the point? Right, deviance ho gaya. So these are nothing but sociological conceptions. It could have been added here, and which we have done. Right? Then rural urban setup, the preventing the distress migration. Did you get the point? Right? So I hope this is clear. But हाँ, हमने ऐसे लिखा, but जो first part of the answer है, अगर हम चाहते तो वो tabular representation भी दे सकते थे, बड़ा अच्छा impact पड़ता. वो अभी मुझे strike किया. उस वक्त करता तो मैं वैसे बना देती. Now, this I have used. Just have a look at it. The question which I gave you, that how ageal model can be used to understand the tribal societies, right? Now, the reason why am I discussing this is, there were 3 students, selected candidates, right? So, 3 students, all 3 of them have written a different answer. All 3 of them have written the application. This is the question from test series, last year's test series. So the question was, AGIL को हम कैसे implement करेंगे tribal framework में. So basically, these students have written different answers. All 3 answers are right. But there is one commonality. In the introduction, all of them have briefly talked about the AGIL framework of person. However, the manner they choose to apply is very different. So this is what I was trying to tell you, कि theory जो है वो common factor होती है, content तो vary करेगा ही, क्योंकि this is not something which was expected. आप उसको ट्राइबल सोसाइटीज में कैसे इंप्लीमेंट कर रहे हो, एवरीबडी कैन डू इट ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ देयर अंडरस्टैंडिंग, एंड वी विल सी सेम क्वेश्चन 3 डिफरेंट आंसर्स, ऑल 3 आर फाइन. जस्ट हैव अ लुक एट इट. सो एजिल फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ फंक्शनल प्रीरिक्विजिट was established by Talcott Parson in his theory of action system. So you have adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency. Adaptation is ensured through economy, goal attainment through political system and leadership, integration through culture, value, religion, and latency through family and education. The person has made the diagram. This is the AGIL of the social system. Now see, what are tribal society? So the person has written they are more primitive in their social organization, institution and practices, and while not as complex, a distinct AGIL framework is observable in tribal societies also. Now, the person has given us this diagram. It has been written by the students, so I am just showing it to you. So can you see the diagram? First is the functional AGIL of the tribal society, जिसमें वही diagram बनाया है. So the person, instead of writing, has made use of the diagram and then tried to apply the application part. So can you see, under adaptation, the person has written hunting, gathering, and limited agriculture. Then under goal attainment, that is adaptation. So how that would happen, goal attainment, how would that happen? So through council of elders, headsman, gram sabhas. Then how integration, so you have religion. Then how latency, family, and the rituals of the family. So this is nothing but functional AGIL of tribal society. The person then decided that let's talk about the dysfunctional aspect as well. That however, there exists an AGIL framework of dysfunctions also, which are seen in the tribal society, which will explain why there is alienation, why there is insurgencies and seclusion which is happening. So with respect to adaptation, which is served through economy, they say that low employment, indebtedness, poverty, exploitation, so that has acted as a dysfunction. Similarly, with respect to goal attainment, the vested interest, misgovernance, that has resulted into dysfunction. Then with respect to integration, there has been alienation because of differences in the customs, practices, institutions with the mainstream. Then with respect to latency and pattern management, the stress, low motivation and breakdown of the solidarity mechanism. Is that very clear? So the person chose first to give you the framework, which is given by Parson. In the similar diagram, he tried to create two spaces. One, the functional ageal model, which can be applied in context of tribal society. And second is the dysfunctional aspect, which can enable us to understand the problems in context of tribal society through this framework. Right? This is clear? Now, this is another script. This is written by, I think, Priyamvada, 13th ranker. How she chose to write the answer. She said Talcott Parson put forth the ageal framework to explain the functional prerequisites which are needed for a social system to survive. Different social systems like tribal society can be explained using this framework. Now the person chose adaptation. It corresponds to relation between system and environment. At a bare minimum, for a system to survive, it needs food and shelter. This is fulfilled by economic system of the society. The person has defined the theory here. And within that, chose to write the application part as well. That is, in a tribal society, the economic system functions through barter or at times exchange of forest produce at local markets for money. Similarly, in context of goal attainment, with respect to goal attainment, the social system needs to identify the goal and prioritize which goals have to be achieved. Now, this is done through political system. Usually among tribals, there exists a strong collective conscience, and tribal leader or the head of the clan helps in achieving the goal attainment. Then with respect to integration, to integrate different systems, legal framework is necessary. Tribal societies have their own value consensus, and deviance is punished as per the norms of the clan, which helps in societal integration. Then latency is instilled through family, education, religion. Tribal society have their own distinct norms. Socialization is effected through community and religion mainly. In this way, ageal framework helps social system to function and persist through time. So this is what is written by Priyamvada, this year's rank 13. Can you see the same question has been answered differently by different set of students? Now let me show you the last thing to make you further understand. Now, this is also by a selected candidate. He's an IPS officer, right? So, the relevance of ageal framework in understanding tribal society. What he chose to do is, ageal framework refers to the theoretical framework provided by Parson in his structure of social. This is Adarsh ki script hai, where he outlined for functional prerequisites that a system must fulfill: adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency, and pattern management. Now, when he is talking about the relevance, so here he has highlighted the problems which are existing in the tribal society. One thing common, did you notice that all have explained the theory? In context of Priyamvada, she has explained the theory in detail, right? Whereas in context of other two students, they have explained the theory in very brief, but the application. So this is your own choice. But can you see the blend of both theory and application here? So in application context, the tribal poverty rate is 30% as compared to 22%. So problem of poverty arises because of difficulty in adapting to the demands of the contemporary economy, right? So their access to resources are already impeded by ecological imperialism, and they are unable to assess or access traditional resources, so land alienation, destruction of forest, etc. Then there is policy inconsistency. So in all the four parameters, the person has highlighted the problem, that how ageal framework can be used to understand the problems confronted by the tribal society. So issue and goal attainment policies are often framed without consulting the tribals, and unnecessary over-ambitious targets and development at the expense of tribals. This is put forward by Khaka committee. Then marginalization, like acts like denotified tribes and all, it prevents their integration in the society because of the stigmatization. Then cultural extinction and conflict is happening, and there are issues in pattern management. There is lack of latency also, which is resulting into inter as well as intra-tribal conflict. For example, Kuki-Meti conflict. Hence, tribal Panchsheel policy should be used to inculcate the Parsonian framework for success. Did you get the point? Is it clear for everyone? Is it making sense that how the theory and application questions can be answered? So this is how it needs to be answered. Okay? Now the third part which I have written in the context is basically talking about the subparts. So you need to understand why did I choose this term subparts is what we have noticed largely UPSC is asking 2 to 3 subparts in one given question. 2 subparts आ रहे हैं और अगर directly वो दिख नहीं रहा है but फिर भी है जैसे यहाँ पर ठीक है एजिल फ्रेमवर्क टू द स्टडी ऑफ ट्राइबल सोसाइटीज और हाउ इट इज रेलिवेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड द प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ ट्राइबल सोसाइटी और फॉर दैट मैटर लेटेंट मैनिफेस्ट फंक्शन एंड करप्शन और फॉर दैट मैटर डिवियंस एंड traffic. So the point here is sometimes the subparts are explicit, sometimes subparts are not explicit. Make sure that you are answering every subpart. All you need to do is prioritize. Prioritize how much importance is to be given. For example, what do you mean by social movements? Discuss the resource mobilization theory of social movement or value added model of social movement. Now in this particular question there are 2 subparts. It says what do you mean by social movement? You cannot write what is social movement, what are different characteristics of social movement, different types of social movement. Nahi. Right? Because utna scope nahi hai. It's a 10 marker question and the question only says what do you mean by social movement? However, if it would have been explain the concept of social movement, or it would have been elaborate on social movement, right? Then you would have given the weightage like 5 and 5 marks. But here it clearly says 2 and 8 marks. You just have to give a definition of social movement, how social movement is one of the significant phenomena which is emerging in various type of societies, and that is why it has become the interest of sociological studies. We have different theories with respect to social movement, one of them being resource mobilization theory, or social unrest theory, or value added model theory. Okay? So did you get the point, what I'm trying to say? So you have to understand how many subparts are there. You have to understand how much priority has to be given to each subpart. At the same time, do not miss out on any subpart. No matter how good an answer you've written, if you have missed out on any subpart which is mentioned in the question, you will lose out on the marks. Clear hai? The last thing which we had in the context was the essence. Now what do I mean by the essence? I'll tell you. Just give me 1 minute. There was a question which I discussed in the beginning. Now, explain the conception or Karl Marx's conception of transition from class in itself to class for itself. Okay? You have to explain the transition which is happening. Now, let us suppose another question is, to what extent, or forget about Karl Marx, forget about to what extent, sorry. Karl Marx's conception of transition from class in itself to class for itself is not supported by the empirical studies. Discuss. Did you get the point? I'll repeat again. Karl Marx's conception of transition from class in itself to class for itself is not supported by empirical studies. What is the essence here? In both the questions, in the first question, the essence was to focus to explain in detail the transition. Right? In the second question, do you realize the essence is that this transition is not supported by empirical studies. So if you are just explaining class in itself, class for itself, transition, you would not fetch marks. Because here the essence is that it is not supported by empirical studies. Many a times what happens is what you write is not wrong, but that is not relevant to the question. Maybe you've written everything, but you did not write what was being asked. That becomes a challenge. Many a time students come and say, ma'am, पूरा 500 marks का paper attempt किया था, paper अच्छा भी हुआ था, इतने कम number क्यों रह गए? क्योंकि हम ये नहीं समझते, हम वो लिखाते हैं जो हमें आता है. And sometimes we have a tendency to convolute a simple question, just to tell the examiner that I am a well-read person. Please don't do that. Write a simple answer, a correct answer, contextually relevant answer. Are you getting my point? ठीक है ना? Essence याद रहेगा? Essence का मतलब क्या होता है? Okay, I'll give you another example. Bring out the significance of participant observation. right? Now, we have a general tendency. What is participant observation? What are the characteristic features, different types, advantages, disadvantages, and conclude. Here the question clearly says bring out the significance. You have to clearly elaborate or explicitly discuss the significance of participant observation, and this has to be done either through theoretical perspectives or through different case studies in which participant observation has been used, or by means of example where participant observation can effectively use for data collection. Did you get the point? Am I making sense? ठीक है, चलो आगे बढ़ें, जल्दी जल्दी करते हैं अब. बोर तो नहीं हो रहे हो? हो भी रहे हो तो कैसे बताओगे? Okay. Sorry for this. Now, before we proceed with this, there was another aspect which I added. Okay, before this, let me just talk about. So the contextual part is clear now. There was another thing which I added, that in a question, what do you have is content also. And content has two parts to it. One is the argument, and other is the substantiation. Many a times the students ask me how many thinkers to quote in an answer. See, that totally depends upon your choice, how many thinkers you know, right? But one thing we need to understand, there is a purpose while we quote thinkers. Thinkers serve the purpose of substantiation. It gives credibility to our argument. And credibility to the argument can be given through other means also. For example, other than thinkers, you have case studies, you have examples, you have data, reports, statistics. All of that can be used to give substantiation, but what is required is substantiation. Is that clear? Now, there are two things which has to be kept in mind. First and foremost, argument without substantiation has no credibility. And just quoting the substantiation serves no purpose. Just randomly you are throwing the name of the thinkers in the face of the examiner would not serve any purpose. भाई purpose होता है thinker को quote करने का, credibility देनी होती है argument को. और ये मैं time and again I've been saying in my respective sessions that who am I, who are you? Right? So whatever you've written in your answer script, if it doesn't have a validity, if it doesn't have a credibility, right? So you would not fetch marks. So thinker serves the purpose of adding or giving credibility to your argument, and that is the need of the hour. So thinker का एक purpose होता है, ठीक है, पहली चीज. दूसरी चीज है कि हर क्वेश्चन में आपको थिंकर नहीं मिलते. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है, नॉट एक्सपेक्टेड क्वेश्चन आ गया, जैसे अब सोशल सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी. नाउ इन दैट सिचुएशन you immediately cannot think of thinkers, right? So you can make use of perspectives. You can make use of sociological terminologies. Remember organic solidarity, deviance, social mobility, feminization of poverty, that can be done. Or conflict school of thought, functionalist school of thought, interpretative school of thought, subaltern perspective, feminist perspective, all of that could have been used. Right? Or you could have used data, case studies, reports to substantiate your arguments. There are different ways of doing that. So don't obsess over the name of thinkers. Pehli cheez. But, I'm putting a disclaimer here. There are certain basic questions, for example, theories. For example, the questions which are directly asked from your syllabus. In that situation, you cannot say you do not have thinkers. So with respect to every content which is mentioned in your syllabus, if you are getting a direct question, you cannot say you do not have the thinkers. You cannot say, I don't recall the name, I don't remember the name. You need to understand it's not about how you are attempting the paper, it is how good you are as compared to others. Albert Einstein said a statement, first, you should know the rules of your game. And second, make sure you play it better than everyone else. So here, you should know the rule of the game, which we are doing today. I am just telling you the rules of this game, how to maximize the score in sociology. Every dimension, which will give you the best possible opportunity to score. But then you have to practice that. You have to play this game better than others. That job you have to do, right? So you can't give me that excuse that I don't remember, I don't recall the name of the thinkers. Yaad karo, likh ke padho, 10 बार रिवाइज करो. एटलीस्ट स्टैंडर्ड क्वेश्चन जो सिलेबस से पूछे हैं उसमें कैसे कह सकते हो थिंकर्स नहीं है. सो इन अ 10 मार्कर 4 to 5 thinkers and in a 20 marker 7 to 8 thinkers you have to write, whether for, against, whichever way you want to mention. Definition में डाल दो, body में डाल दो, conclusion में डाल दो, counter argument में डाल दो. But in a 10 marker question, 4 to 5 thinkers. In a 20 marker question, 7 to 8 thinkers, provided that's a standard question. Standard as an expected question. और जहां application based आ जाए, unexpected question आ जाए, कोई current में से topic आ जाए for which you were not prepared beforehand, obviously in that situation, हम रिलेटेबिलिटी इस्टेब्लिश करते हैं, चाहे वो पर्सपेक्टिव्स हो, स्कूल ऑफ थॉट हो, या फिर टर्मिनोलॉजीज हो सोशियोलॉजिकल. वी आर ट्राइंग टू इस्टेब्लिश थ्रू दैट एंड वी ट्राई टू रिलेट, कोरोबोरेट विथ ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग थ्योरीज. जैसे अभी हमने नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में जबरदस्ती पीर बुर्दुए को डाला था. डिड यू गेट द पॉइंट? इज दिस वेरी क्लियर फॉर एवरीवन? इज इट मेकिंग सेंस? नाउ the second aspect of answer writing is, one, you have worked on your content and context. The second aspect is presentation. See, I've been saying this in my essay sessions as well, that examiner doesn't know you personally. So the only source of your interaction with the examiner is through your script. That is the mode of interaction. Now, if your knowledge is not reflected in your script, if your understanding, clarity of the topic is not reflected in your script, you will not fetch marks, as simple as that. So the presentation matters a lot. First and foremost, the presentation has to be lucid. This also I'll show you through Topper's script, that how a simple writing, sometimes I see students have a habit of writing convoluted statements, writing long statements without full stop, writing one single para in the entire page, right? Or writing in a very, how should I put it, hodgepodge, haphazard manner. Don't do that. Don't unnecessarily make your answer complicated. Lucid writing, simple to comprehend. It says if you cannot explain something simply, that means you yourself have not understood it. So write a simple interpretation, but lucid does not mean that you are trying to use a layman language. There should be a difference in a general studies student as well as the student from a particular optional background. So the vocab of your particular respective optional has to be reflected on your script. So lucid means simple writing, but lucid does not mean in layman language. For example, if a theory is asked on Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, you have to write the words like ideal type. You have to write inner worldly asceticism. You have to write idea of calling. You have to write doctrine of predestination. You have to write spirit of capitalism. You have to write social constellations. Did you get my point? Similarly, theory of class struggle. You have to write pauperization, miserization, homogenization, proletarization leading to polarization. You have to write class in itself, class for itself. Did you get the point? Similarly, if it's a theory of Durkheim, you have to mention mechanical solidarity, organic solidarity. You have to talk about division of labor. You have to talk about anomie. So you cannot write in your own language. There are certain key conceptualization of the theories of the thinkers which you've studied. So if it is a Karl Marx theory, it has to look like a Karl Marx theory. If it is Andre Bete's perspective, it has to look like Andre Bete's. It cannot be some XYZ's perspective. So it has to be written in a simple manner, yet it has to be in sync with the sociological demands. Let me give you an example to explain. I just hope I'm able to locate. सृष्टि की देख लें स्क्रिप्ट. What topic should we take? कोई सा भी उठा सकते हैं वैसे तो. Wait. which script it is. Just give me 1 minute, guys. Neha, this was rank 15. Just have a look at it. The question says, how Durkheim's idea of sacred and profane be used to understand the contemporary society. In the elementary form of religious life, Durkheim argued that all societies divide the world into two categories, sacred and profane. Religion is based upon this division. It is a unified system of belief and practices related to sacred things, things which are set apart and forbidden. Profane are mundane, day-to-day things. Anything that is not sacred is profane. Durkheim saw religion as a worship of the society. Sacred and the rituals and the forms of collective worship associated with it act as a mean to unify the group and promote social solidarity. It helps reinforcing collective conscience and order. In the modern society, we see a secular religion emerging. Watching sports is an example of some form of collective worship. The trophy or the World Cup is seen as sacred. Similarly, national pride, patriotism are sacred values. The united grief of all Indians in the event of terrorist attack or natural disaster reinforces the collective conscience. At the same time, sacred value of traditional religion is still very strong, as seen by demands for online darshan, Astha TV, live streaming on app. Thus, sacred and profane can help understand what are the values upheld by any contemporary society and how they are reinforced. Is that very clear? Can you see the lucid presentation? Can you see the balance, how the person has discussed the theory of sacred and profane and how the contemporary relevance in the modern society has been established? So the answer is not only lucid, it is also balanced. Can you see the coherence in the answer? Right? Everything is flowing in a very smooth manner. How it all started, कि कहाँ ये work दिया गया था, background, what do you mean by religion? Unified set of beliefs and practices which binds the people into one single moral community. How it consists of two things, sacred and profane. What do you mean by sacred? What do you mean by profane? How in his theory of religion he talked about that religion is nothing but society divinized, right? How that application can be ensured in the current times and how it is getting implemented. Can you see this? Can you see the coherence? Can you see the balance? Can you see the lucidity? Despite that, can you see the key terminologies which have been used here? Whether it was the definition of religion, it was the authentic definition, whether it was sacred, profane, whether it was the usage of work of social solidarity, or it was collective conscience, or it was the application. Can you see this? So lucid does not mean layman language. The basic nuances of theoretical presentation has to be ensured. Is this very clear for everyone? Can we proceed now? Okay. Now, the another aspect is well-structured. Now, when I talk about well-structured, there are three aspects of answer writing. You have introduction, you have body, and you have conclusion. Now, there are a lot of people who have confusion what to be written in introduction, how to enhance the presentation of the body, and what is supposed to be done in the conclusion. So another 10 minutes and the problem would be resolved. So when it comes down to optional paper, you have to be prepared with your introductions and your conclusions beforehand. I know you must be wondering कि ये कैसे possible है? बिल्कुल possible है. Obviously, standard question. So whatever topics are there in your syllabus. That is why I'm saying the diligent awareness about the syllabus. So whatever topics are there in the syllabus, with respect to that, proper introduction and conclusions have to be prepared beforehand, right? Now there are different ways of writing the introduction. For example, one of the chief and the most simple way of writing the introduction is you can define the key concept. That's the easiest way out there. You define if there comes a question on social fact, if there comes a question on Verstehen, if there comes a question on religion, sacred and profane, जैसे अभी हमने देखा. So one of the way of introducing your content is just define what do you mean by Verstehen. So interpretative understanding of social action through emphatic liaison so as to build the sequence of motives to trace the course and effect of the social action. So this is nothing but the definition of Verstehen. Similarly, if there is a question on class, there is a question on stratification, there is a question on social change. So the easiest way of doing is defining the concept in your introduction. The other way of introducing is giving the premise. For example, if there is a question on social fact, so how Durkheim wanted to establish a separate niche for sociology. He wanted to establish sociology as a distinct discipline, and that is why he wanted to develop a subject matter of sociology which can be observed, which can be explained, and that is why, and it can be subjected to those methodologies which are applied or which can be studied as a fact as it is being studied in other social sciences or other sciences for that matter. So the premise can be used. Similarly, Verstehen, that how Max Weber, he widened the ambit of sociology by establishing it as a study of social action. Right? And to study the social action, you need to interpret, you need to understood the meanings and motives. And objectively, those meanings and motives can be studied through Verstehen. So again, this is the premise through which you can start your answer. Or the third way is establishing the importance of the thinker. That how Max Weber's conceptualization of Verstehen is a significant contribution to contemporary methodology in sociology. Or how the latent and manifest function has, the difference between these concepts has enabled us to widen the ambit of sociological understanding beyond the commonsensical perception. This is how it can be proceeded, right? So establishing the importance, आपको पता है ये कुछ standard thinkers हैं जिन पे question बनता है. So चाहे वो division of labor हो Durkheim का, चाहे वो suicide हो, चाहे वो social fact हो, ठीक है, methodology हो, you can prepare the introductions in your subconscious mind in one line. Is that very clear? ठीक है? So either you can define the concept, you can give the premise, or you can establish the importance of the thinker. Similarly, another set: premise, definition, importance. There's a question on social fact. Importance. Emile Durkheim's conception of social fact was essentially an endeavor by him to create a separate niche and scientific status for sociology. You can start like this. Or you can start: a social fact is those ways of acting, feeling, thinking, which is capable of exercising an external constraint on the individual, which is general, which is diffused, and which has its own independent existence. Similarly, premise: how in Durkheim's view sociology is an objective science which should conform to the model of other sciences. As a result, the subject of sociology must be specific, observed, and explained. Hence, for this, Durkheim said the subject of sociology is nothing but social fact. So you can start with premise, you can start with definition, you can start with importance. Is this very clear for everyone? So either you can start with the definition or premise or importance. At the same time, there are two more things which I have added. One, statistics, recent judgment, current news, if the question is application based. कभी कभी आ जाता है, जैसे एक बार आया था कि जैसे ये social significance of national education policy. So how you can start with Kasturi Rangan report has led to the passage of national education policy, which was meant for social mobility and preventing alienation, or which would result into development of cognitive intellect of the people. So somehow you can start like this, right? So that is the background which you are giving. Similarly, in the light of a recent judgment, some recent judgment has happened, okay? Or there is the critical analysis of, let us say, POSH, Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. So how Supreme Court said that the Sexual Harassment Act has proven to be a toothless tiger. It has not been able to achieve the desired objective. So you can start with this background: recent judgments, statistics, reports, depending upon the nature of the question. Is that clear? And the last thing which I have wrote is depending upon the keywords also. Now what I'm just trying to tell you is, in this context, many a times the question come in context of, with respect to, in light of. तो अगर ऐसे words likhe hue hain in your question, so the introduction becomes these things. For example, in the light of XYZ. So that XYZ becomes the introduction. With respect to ABC, so that ABC becomes the introduction. So अगर आपके question में है in the context of, in the light of, with respect to, so all those become the introduction. Is that clear for everyone? ठीक? Then comes body. I think most of the part we have already discussed. I just have to identify the last one. So addressing the main theme of the question, we have already talked, essence. Then maintaining the coherence, we have already discussed. Adequate substantiation for credibility, we have already talked about it. What we need to further elaborate on is enhancing the visibility of the content. It is very important that your content needs to be enriched and it should be largely visible. Now the first thing is handwriting. See, on your response portal, your resource portal, just go through the topper script. This year's rank 6, rank 13, rank 40, rank 67, rank 73, rank 130, 131, all of them, and brilliantly written scripts. And of past years, if you want to refer, you have Adarsh ka script hai, Shrushti ka script hai, Neha ka script hai, Catherine ka script hai. All those scripts are there on your platform. Just go through it. You will understand not everyone has a beautiful or a phenomenal handwriting. सबकी handwriting normal है और अभी हमने इतनी toppers की script देखी भी. Priyamvada has a beautiful handwriting. I would say that she has a very beautiful and a very neat presentation. She reminds me of Shrushti when it comes down to presentation. So both of them have very pretty handwriting, but rest of them have good handwriting, not very stupendous or out of the world, but did you notice each script is comprehensible. Whatever they have written, the other party is able to understand. So handwriting should be legible. That is all what is required. कीड़े मुकोड़े नहीं रेंगने चाहिए. Apart from that, it should be only legible. That is the criteria. Second important aspect, all the necessary key terms in your answers needs to be highlighted. Now there are different ways of highlighting the answer. You have a choice. Either you underline or you inbox them. ठीक है? So either you are, if this is my script, the side of the script, first of all, write small paras. If you are doing a paragraph writing, I'm just giving you an example. ठीक है? So what I mean when I say underlining, so whatever key terms that you have used, you can underline. But too much underlining is not advisable. Otherwise, samajh nahi aata, where do you want to draw the attention of the examiner? That's one way of doing it. Other way of doing it is you can inbox to draw the attention of the examiner. That's your choice. Or you can write it in inverted commas if you want to draw the attention. Or you can write in bold letters. For example, this is how you can draw the attention of the examiner to the key terms so that he doesn't have to go through that process of reading each and everything. Is that very clear? He has to correct 19 answers in every script. That can be a challenging thing, right? Now, next aspect is diagrams and flowcharts. Absolutely welcome. Now, so far, if you have seen the interactionism wala jo flowchart मैंने आपको बताया था, or if you have noticed the mind map which we have made, ठीक है? So in all these things, if you've realized, you are absolutely allowed to make use of diagrams and flowcharts. For example, you have to talk about alienation. Let us suppose you're talking about alienation, theory of alienation of Karl Marx, and you have to talk about how in capitalist society the person gets alienated from the process, from the product, from self and from fellow men. तो आप पूरी अपनी theory लिख रहे हो, ठीक है? ये आपकी script है, This is, अरे यार, ये change हो जाता है. This is your script, and you are writing the answer. ठीक है? Now let us suppose you've written the answer and now you have to incorporate the diagram. Not necessarily you have to write the diagram in the entire page. I decided I will use a side box to make my diagram. From the process, from the product, from fellow men, and from self. So in between I have made a man and I have shown how he is alienated from all the four directions. Is that very clear? Similarly, did you remember that Robert K. Merton ka deviance and conformity wala diagram? That could have been done. Now let us suppose there is a question with respect to, let us say, Dalit movement, right? And how Dalit movement has emerged in different stages. I can make use of it. Different stages. What was happening in the first stage, what was happening in 1950s to 60s, then what was happening post 1970s, what happened post 1980s, what is the contemporary reality. And here I can explain the basic minimum explanation which could be given with respect to the stages through which Dalit movement has emerged. Choice is yours. There are many ways of making the diagrams. Similarly, flowcharts. For example, there is a question, there is, let us say, social action of Weber. You can divide Vec rational, word rational, okay? So you can give different types of social action as put forward by Max Weber. Similarly, the diagram for suicide as given by Durkheim. So the choice is yours, that how you want to incorporate the diagrams while you are presenting your content. Is that clear? Similarly, you can make use of the vicious cycle. Let us say the question is with respect to poverty. You can easily make a vicious cycle. So you have to be prepared beforehand that in what type of question, what type of diagrammatic representation I am going to use. Similarly, there are two aspects. Let's say the question talks about Emily Durkheim's division of labor. So the division of labor can be functional also, and it can be anomic also, dysfunctional also. And then you can make a flow chart. The functional aspect of division of labor, the pathological aspect of division of labor. And you can make a flow chart. So that totally depends upon you. But make sure that if you're writing 19 answers, every answer should be written in a manner that the examiner is impressed with your creativity, with your organizational skills. Because you just don't have to write correct answers. You have to write an answer which is better than the others. Right? So you just have to aim at getting that one extra mark in every question that you are attempting. And trust me, 19 extra mark in one paper, 38 extra mark in your optional, and you are in the list. So every answer while you are attempting, just give it a thought. How should I improve the presentation of this answer? How should I enhance the visibility of the answer that I fetch that one extra mark? The choice is yours, right? Now the question arises whether we should write in paragraph format or a bullet point format. Absolutely your choice. But nowadays we don't have enough space to write paragraphs, right? Even if you choose to write paragraphs, choose small paragraphs. Ideally, what we prefer is the combination of both the paragraphs as well as the bullet points. That is a very ideal way of presentation. But if you want to write in paragraph writing, absolutely welcome, but write small paragraphs. Reading long paragraphs is very boring. It just snaps our attention. Don't do that. Okay. Another thing is, wherever there is compare, contrast, tabular representation is always advisable. And I've already told you, I've already showed you that I and me wala question in which the tabular representation can be used. So here you have parameters. And here there is a comparison. and then you have to write the answer. So whether it is comparison between the social sciences, for example, the comparison between sociology, economics, sociology, political science, sociology, history, this could have been done this way. Or it is the theories comparison, whether it is stratification. So let us say Weber's stratification with that of Marx stratification. So what is the basis of stratification? What is the structure of stratification? What is the consequence of stratification, and what do they say about the desirability, and what they say about the inevitability of stratification. And then you can do the comparative analysis. So wherever there is comparison which has been asked, if you have enough understanding and time, please try to develop the tabular representation. Now let us say you don't have time or space, your handwriting is big and everything. In that situation, even then you can use parameters. For example, basis of stratification, Weber, Marx. Structure of stratification, Weber, Marx. So if you are not able to write in the tabular format, because on both the side you have margins, this is another way of presenting the content. Is this very clear? So try to incorporate diagrams. And where do you get the ideas for these diagrams? Please visit the Telegram channel. I think it's by Sociology by Smriti Shah. And there I will be uploading, I think I've already uploaded Durkheim, a mind map. I've already uploaded Marx. I'll upload this Merton as well. So as and when I'm ready with the mind maps, I'll be uploading on that channel and all that necessary stuff which we are discussing today. So I've already uploaded the topper script which I want you to go through, so you can refer to that. Then language competence. See, many of us have very basic understanding of English, but since we have chosen our medium to be English, we don't have to be very good at it, but yes, spelling errors, grammatical errors should be avoided. ठीक है, ऐसा तो हम नहीं कह सकते कि एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट लिखेंगे, ये होता ही नहीं है. ग्रामर की एक अच्छी बात है कि बहुतों के ग्रामर रूल्स बहुत वीक होते हैं, तो बहुत बार यू डोंट इवन रियलाइज यू आर मेकिंग दैट एरर. बट स्पेलिंग एरर स्पेसिफिकली विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू की टर्मिनोलॉजीज इज अ बिग नो. So the name of the scholar, right, the key conceptions, so the spelling errors should not be there. Isliye I advise write and practice. The more you write, the more you get the understanding of it. Okay? And finally, subheadings. See, it totally depends that whether or how you choose to write the subheadings, but just one piece of advice, way forward, criticism, introduction, body, these are not the subheadings, right? Write some good subheadings and that will help you to fetch more marks, right? I'll try to upload all the necessary scripts which I believe is good and one should go through them. So then as far as conclusion is concerned, just one piece of advice. There are two parts to the conclusion, right? One is the penultimate part and one is the ultimate conclusion. So if you have noticed, penultimate conclusion consists of either the counter argument or the way forward, right? Which usually people consider it to be the part of the body only. So absolutely no issue. So you don't have to get into that complicated analysis. But please remember, in most of the question, counter argument is supposed to be given, right? And the ultimate conclusion is the overall interpretation that despite the share of criticism, the theory had the heuristic impact in the field of sociology. That's the ultimate conclusion. Despite its share of limitation, the theory of Max Weber remains bold and illuminating, right? Despite the share of criticism, the conception of I and me in Mead's theory of self has given it scope for change. Are you getting the point? So the ultimate conclusion has to be largely on the positive note when it comes down to the questions based on thinkers. And the penultimate, just the before what you have written at end, it consists of the counter argument. So if you have to go in a mechanical domain, you have introduction, you have body, you have conclusion. Within conclusion, you have two parts to it. Penultimate talks about the counter argument or way forward depending upon the question, and the ultimate conclusion is the overall essence that you want to give, that despite the share of criticism, this, or the contemporary relevance, something like that. Is that clear? And the ultimate conclusion and introduction needs to be prepared beforehand. Is this clear for everyone? Keywords we have already talked about. Now, I know many people have this confusion that which book list needs to be referred, because many of you might not be taking any coaching, right? So these are the basic books when it comes down to paper 1. And selective reading. See, I would suggest NCERT should be your first base, so class 11th and 12th. Then you should read IGNOU booklets. Within IGNOU booklets, which specific booklet to be read, I have prepared a detailed book list for that also, and which will be uploaded on your description link. So a detailed book list would be uploaded, topic wise book list. So refer only to those booklets of IGNOU which has been mentioned in that list. That's the thing. With respect to Harry-Lombus, with respect to Ritzer, with respect to Giddens, only selective reading has to be done. Is that very clear? You don't have to go into the details. In fact, for time being, Ritzer can be avoided. Harry-Lombus, Holborn, and Anthony Giddens. And Harry-Lombus, there is significant selective reading. Anthony Giddens, 2 or 3 chapters are required, which is also mentioned in the book list. Only that needs to be go through. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? Now, I have also mentioned Essential Sociology by Nitin Sangwan, since that's one book which majority of you are referring. Absolutely no issues. You can refer, but that should not be the sole reference. You should enrich the content which is provided by that book by adding more content to it based on previous year questions, as well as selective reading from the standard books. Similarly, and most importantly, Oxford Dictionary of Sociology, that's written at the end. It is not visible on the screen, I guess. That is mandatory purchase, because many a times questions like 10 markers and all are asked on the selective terms, right? And very detailed description of terms are given in Oxford Dictionary of Sociology. So that should always be there on your table. Whenever you are studying sociology, Oxford Dictionary should be there on the table. Whenever you come across a term in the previous year questions or while understanding, reading the concept, immediately refer to that dictionary and prepare your content. Similarly, for paper 2 also, right? There are certain toppers' notes which are also available online. For example, Tushar Anshu. For example, I think Akshat Kaushal. So you can refer those notes as well. Now, if I talk about these books, again, there have to be very selective reading. You don't have to get into the detailed reading of these books. And largely, if you look at paper 2 of sociology, it is section C, which poses a challenge, because from there, a lot of contemporary questions are asked. So that has to be prepared from your end. That work has to be done. Now, a lot of content is available on a lot of websites online. Internet is the best source for preparation these days. So, Coursera पे भी बहुत सारी videos मिल जाएंगी. अगर आप JSTOR पे जाओ, EPW पे जाओ, तो बहुत सारा content मिल जाता है. So if you come across a topic on which you're not able to find, so you just need to Google it, and you will get the list of studies or the researches which have been done in that particular. You just have to pick up few dimensions to it and create enough content which is ensuring you to write a 20 marker or a 10 marker question in the exam. तो बहुत ज़्यादा डिटेल में पढ़ने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. स्मार्ट स्टडी करेंगे, हर टॉपिक पे इतना मिनिमम कंटेंट बस तैयार कर लेंगे कि अगर 20 नंबर का या 10 नंबर का क्वेश्चन आए तो हम आंसर कर लें. Is that very clear for everyone? Now, the last aspect of the session. Why test series? There are a lot of people who have been mailing me that, ma'am, should we join test series after the result, before the result? Should we join it next year if you're not attempting this year? So you need to understand that test series serves a purpose. ऐसा नहीं होता, कोई करंट अफेयर्स नहीं है कि अभी ज्वाइन करेंगे तो करंट बेस्ड क्वेश्चन मिलेंगे, नेक्स्ट ईयर एग्जाम लिखेंगे तो करंट बेस्ड क्वेश्चन चेंज हो जाएंगे. ऐसा नहीं होता. सोशियोलॉजी है. टेस्ट सीरीज हेल्प्स यू टू डेवलप द नैक ऑफ आंसर राइटिंग. तो जितनी भी चीज अभी हमने बोली, आई टोल्ड यू ना दैट यू शुड नो द रूल्स ऑफ योर गेम एंड यू हैव टू लर्न इट टू प्ले इट बेटर देन एवरीवन एल्स. And for that, it is very important that you join some or the other test series. Because when you join a test series, you become disciplined. When you join a test series, have you ever seen, when you are studying on a very daily basis, right? You're revising, you're studying. But then, if you know that a week later, you have to write the test, then the level of preparation is altogether different. Then you get into that mode of learning. You get into the mode of organizing the content, right? And then you get into the mode of answering those questions which might be outside your comfort zone. Right? So in that situation, it gives you that experience, which is very important. And you should not wait for the year that when I will be in a position of clearing prelims, then I'll be joining optional ka test series. Suppose karo, aapne next year ke liye chhod diya. And next year, your result is there and you have cleared your prelims. And then you joined the optional test series. You just have 3 months. You joined it. And after writing 2 tests, you realized you haven't developed the knack of answer writing only. Will you not panic? Do you really think that you will get the opportunity of clearing prelims every year? No, it doesn't work. That's the most uncertain stage. If you ask me, the most difficult stage of this examination is prelims. It is very dicey. A lot of good students don't make it. But if you are a good student, if you've strategized your preparation well, then mains is still within your limits. The challenge is prelims, and once you clear prelims, consider it as blessing, because every year you would not get that opportunity. So do not wait for that time when you would be anxious that I'm not yet prepared, what am I supposed to do? Don't let that time come, right? So even if you are writing next year, just start preparing for your optional test series. Start attempting the test. You will get a hang of it, and trust me, अगले साल फिर कोई और लगा लेना यार. तुम लोग जीएस में इतना पैसा खर्च करने को तैयार रहते हो, इतना टाइम देने को तैयार रहते हो, और यहाँ 500 नंबर इज एट स्टेक एंड पीपल आर थिंकिंग ज्वाइन करें नहीं करें. अच्छा, ज्वाइन मत करो, अगले साल मत करना, बट राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस तो डेवलप कर लो. वंस यू डेवलप द नैक ऑफ आंसर राइटिंग, नेक्स्ट ईयर डोंट ज्वाइन. नेक्स्ट ईयर प्रैक्टिस इट ऑन योर ओन, मेक अ ग्रुप ऑफ फ्रेंड्स एंड ट्राई टू गिव ईच अदर द फीडबैक, बट एटलीस्ट डेवलप आंसर राइटिंग फर्स्ट. So it is very advisable, and even if you're not writing this year, your mains, this period is specifically for mains preparation. So whether it is optional, whether it is essay, whether it is ethics, whether it is security, society, governance, till November, this is the best period to prepare for mains, because once the November set in, once you get that month of December, you will start becoming anxious and you will shift your entire focus towards prelims preparation, because at the end of it, if you don't clear prelims, you would never get to write the mains, right? And क्या हो जाएगा अगर pre-qualify हो गया और mains की तैयारी नहीं है तो? इसलिए this is the perfect time. So whether you are writing it this year or you are writing it next year, you should be prepared with it. Is that very clear? Again, I'm reiterating that join any test series, but please join. It gives you a discipline, it gives you a proper timetable, it enables you to channelize your preparation in the correct direction, and timely you are able to identify your mistakes and you are able to work upon that, and you will not panic at the last moment. And if you currently you are in a situation of a dilemma that whether you are clearing prelims or not, even then join the test series. Why waste 1 month? At least write 2 tests by that time. देखो अल्टीमेटली तो क्लियर ही करना है ना एग्जाम, इस साल नहीं तो अगले साल सही, राइट? सो द टेस्ट सीरीज इज नेवर गोइंग टू डिसअपॉइंट. आई जस्ट मेंशन वन रेफरेंस हियर. रैंक 6 यक्ष का मैं कोरा पे एक ब्लॉग पढ़ रही थी, उसने लिखा था, एंड ही सेड दैट इन द 2020 attempt, he did join the test series, but he did not write the test. And as a result, in the mains examination, he committed a blunder. I think Quora पे उसका ये answer अभी भी है. And he committed a blunder that in paper 2, वो होता है ना that first and fifth question is compulsory, and then you have to choose 3 more questions with at least 1 question from each section. But since he had not practiced the answer writing, he has not given written the test in the test series, he ended up writing all the 3 optional answers from the same section. So obviously one answer was not being corrected, and as a result he lost a considerable chunk of marks and he could not make it to the list. So this time he made it a point to write the answers, and the result is right in front of us. 285 is what he has scored. And Yakshka scripts are there on the portal. Please go visit them. You will realize wonderfully written answer, very very nicely blended diagrams, presentation, everything is in sync. Same goes for Priyamvada, same goes for Shrishti, same goes for Antariksh. Okay. One disclaimer, I would definitely upload a script of a student. This year he has secured rank 252, Pratik. I want to make a special mention about him because it was his sheer hard work that completely transformed his probability of clearing this exam. Last year in sociology he scored I think 195, and this year through his hard work, going through the scripts of the topper, identifying his shortcomings, working upon them, writing the test, working upon the feedback, this year he has scored 280 marks. 95 marks improvement. I'll ask the team to upload Pratik's ka script also, and when you will read his answers, his presentation, the hard work is visible there. Okay? So please go through topper's script which are there. You will understand why am I emphasizing on those things again and again. Okay? So on this note, I would like to conclude today's session by just saying one thing. Please work hard. This is the best time you can put in the maximum effort. And do not wait for that result ki prelims hoga, to mains ki tayari karenge. It doesn't work like this, right? The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So I hope this session has helped you in some other way in answering your doubts. In case you still have some more doubts, you can connect me on my Telegram channel, right? So there is a channel, Sociology by Sritisha. Try to get access to that, and all the necessary content I would be uploading there. So I hope it will help you in some or the other way. I wish you all the very best. Please work on your answer writing. Please work on the strategies which we have discussed today. And even then, if you have any other doubt, please feel free to connect to me. Okay? Have a nice day, people. All the very best for your attempt. Take care.